Some big rule changes are coming to the NHL, including one that would have impacted one of the Lightning's Cup wins. Plus, Nick Paul, trade bait candidate? We'll talk about it on today's Locked on Lightning.
You're Locked on Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked on Lightning your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Tampa Bay Lightning podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we want to start out by shouting out the everydayers, those of you who tune into every single show, every single week. We love you. We appreciate the support you give us week in, week out. I'm Nick Morgan, and I am joined by the 7-Up to my saltine crackers. Good analogy because both of us are just not feeling up to the weather today. Greg Steven. Hey, Greg.
Good morning. Good morning. Great night of football last night, and obviously taking a toll on us this morning.
Yes. Well, yours is football related. Mine, I think, is allergy related because when you go from consistently 95 to consistently 70 in the span of 5 days, yeah, your allergens will do that to you. Yeah. Hey, there's better stuff to talk about than that, though, right? There's hockey on the horizon. You said something interesting last month in one of our very first shows. You said Nick Paul might be a good trade bait candidate. Do you still think that way? Or do the Lightning need to make another move? Those are topics that we're going to be talking about on today's show. But first, Greg, it's been a while since we've had any actual news to talk about across the NHL. So let's dive in to some of the headlines.
Absolutely.
Related to the new CBA. Of course, this week is the GM meetings. Bill Daly talking to a lot of GMs. A couple of interesting tidbits that came out this week that could impact the Tampa Bay Lightning in a big way. So let's just bullet point them real quick, and then you and I, Greg, can jump in, talk about them one at a time. The big headline, which we put on our Instagram this week, an 84-game season. It looks like there's going to be less preseason games, 2 more regular season games, and it also looks like the season might start the end of September rather than the first, week or so of October. So that's a big one right there. Another big one that you and I were talking about before the break, the LTIR loophole, the beloved Nikita Kucherov rule, man. That looks like that's on the door. It looks like starting this playoff season, the NHL GMs are going to close that LTIR loophole by having what they call a playoff salary cap. And that's according to the Athletics' Pierre LeBrun. A couple other minor things. It looks like that the max contract is going to go down from 8 years to 7 years. And also, not related to the CBA, but just in general for next year, it looks like the salary cap is going to go up to $103 million. So, Greg, obviously, I just threw a lot of information out there. Let's dive into these, shall we? Which one stands out to you as one that you want to talk about right away?
I think the biggest bullet you listed was the IR changes, and I think they're important. Do I think that they are game-breaking necessarily? I don't. Some people are going to argue the opposite, and I think it can be true that it is game-breaking, right? It's not like it can't be. Depends on how the teams use it. Obviously, we've seen some abuse of it lately. We saw the Lightning do it with Kucherov. We saw Vegas do it with, I think, Mark Stone, and then we saw to Chuck on the IR as well, and all 3 teams won the Cup. So, obviously, my opinion is slightly wrong, but. I do think, in the end, one guy doesn't make a team. Adding a huge superstar to a team that's already loaded does make an impact. So I'm looking forward to this change. I want to see if this makes a team that we haven't seen lately reach the Cup. But I don't know. It's hard to know how much of an impact it'll have until we see it. I think a few years, honestly.
I disagree with you what you said at the beginning. I think this is absolutely a game-breaking move right now, just because we've seen that loophole be game-breaking over the past couple seasons. And you mentioned all those Cup winners who have had some kind of LTIR help and have used that extra cap space to go out, make a big move at the deadline. I think was the Kucherov year the year that they went out and got who was it that year? Was it
That's
Barclay
what I was trying to think
Goodrow
about.
and was that
Yeah.
year or was that the Nick Paul year? I don't know.
It might have been the Nick Paul year.
Yeah, they got somebody big. But yeah, I mean, you've also seen like other teams try this, like Colorado with Landeskog the last couple of years have kind of been able to load up. You meant one of the teams you mentioned, the Chicago Blackhawks, were kind of the first team to do this with when Patrick Kane was battling some injuries last decade.
Yeah.
So it's been a big help. And you look at what Florida did last year with Tkachuk being injured during the Four Nations, they were able to get out and get Brad Marchand and get that contract. And I think they took that big swing and got Seth Jones a little bit earlier in the year, but they were able to get him onto the team and not have to worry about the cap implications as much. That's to me a game-breaking move, because I agree with you with what you said. I think this is gonna maybe cause some of the big guns to be less aggressive at the deadline. And maybe you're right. Maybe there is a little bit more parity, and a team that's now, not Tampa Bay, not Florida, not Vegas, is going to have a chance to make a big run.
It's definitely possible. And look, maybe it is more game breaking than I think it is right now, but I think until I see what happens with it, I don't know that I totally buy into it. You can give a team $9 million, right? Like, but Florida already just re-signed Brad Marchand and there's a salary cap. So does it matter really in the end? I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, obviously if a guy, I think to me, the abuse part of it comes in when it's hard to tell if a guy is realistically out all the way up until the playoffs, right? So I think the abuse of calling something an injury still and it not actually being an injury is the real issue, because that to me is cheating. Like if someone's not injured, he can't be on the IR. And I think that's mostly what was happening. Really depends on your take, I guess.
Yeah. I think you can like picture a GM going in there with like a bag of soap and just beating a player's ankle. And it's like, that's
the IR.
That's a 2-week bruise.
Yeah.
You should be ready to go right around April 14th of this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you. We'll see how it goes. And I also think that we mentioned off the top the NHL salary cap is going up. I think there's maybe less need of this, but I also think that you're still going to see some teams, on that bubble they would have still tried to make a big move and, absolutely stoke the roster. I mean,
and look, you don't want insane teams to have so much more money than they should, right? Like, so if Cooch does go down, do the Lightning deserve money to replace him? Sure. If he goes down for a long time, but he has time to probably recover before the playoffs and then he returns, that is where, to me, again, the issue is.
Yeah. So. Couple of the other ones, max contract changing. I don't think it's going to have that huge of an impact other than one fewer year of Eric Chernak from now on. Yeah. 84 game schedule. What do you think about that?
Look, I don't think it makes too much of a difference, honestly. I've seen a lot of people give some hot takes online about how it's better, it's worse, it's whatever. I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. I have never been a huge preseason guy. It's tough for me to watch any sport that isn't, counting for something. So for me, preseason being reduced is great as a fan, right? And two more games isn't going to change too much. I don't think it's going to change too much for the players either, to be honest with you. So I think the next biggest bullet point to me is that I read was the relaxation of player dress codes, which I found so interesting because players already, I think, intentionally and they choose to dress pretty sharp when they play hockey. Yeah. So I don't know that that's really going to change much, but maybe it's more for the coaching is not allowed to force that upon them. I'm not sure how much of an impact that really has, but I just thought that was interesting. It was snuck in there.
I never knew there was a dress code. I just thought the players loved wearing like the Armani suits, and
I
these
think
are
it depends on the coach. I think it's like a coaching thing, but I could be totally wrong. I
yeah,
don't know too much about the rules around the actual dress code itself.
yeah. I mean, these are fashionable young men. I'm sure they love dressing to the nines. I feel like Henrik Lundqvist set the standard in New York all those years. Uh,
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, even when I grew up playing hockey in high school and a little bit in college and even before that, the coaches were all like, wear a blazer at least.
yeah,
Throw a blazer on and a collared shirt at the very least. It's game day. We got to look the part, and I think that's a good part of hockey culture, honestly.
yeah. For being bruised, missing teeth, hockey players sure dress snazzy.
Yeah,
One more note on the 84 games to me. The only thing that stood out to me is that the season starting what looks like it could be up to 2 weeks early in some
yeah,
seasons. It seems like that's, even though there's 2 more games, that there's maybe a little bit more breathing room in the schedule. So maybe you get a little bit more rest too. So more games, but maybe I think the
more
Lightning
time.
had like 13 back-to-backs this year.
Yeah,
Maybe a little bit fewer back-to-backs, maybe another, extra couple days rest here and there. That to me, I think is a big thing. And I think it could,
yeah,
especially a team like, as you constantly point out, Greg, can they stay healthy is a big question mark for them. I think
absolutely.
that could play a factor if it's true. And that's
Right.
one of the things that Pierre LeBrun said we're still figuring out.
And I'll toss one more comment into that. It's that we get more hockey as fans, or earlier, I guess, is better too. Like, I would rather not sit for 4 months in the summer and being like, where's hockey at? Instead, now it comes 2 weeks early, and that's kind of like Christmas.
Yeah. Hell yeah, brother. I'm right there with you. Let's talk about Nick Paul. A good piece of the Lightning middle six. He's been a solid contributor for the past couple of years. Greg, you said a while back that you thought he might be a good trade bait target. Do you still think that headed into the season? Plus, do the Lightning need to make another move before the season starts? Is there even one out there for them? We'll talk about that coming up in just 1 second. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season, it's officially here. How about the Eagles winning a nail-biter last night over the Dallas Cowboys? FanDuel is making sure you're ready for this Sunday's big kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits exactly the way I like to bet at any given moment. I can do player props. I can build a same-game parlay, or one of my favorite things to do, I can jump into the action live as it unfolds with in-game bets. It makes every game more exciting, whether I'm watching my team, the Lions, or just keeping an eye on my fantasy lineup. It's a quick, easy way to add a little bit more energy to your Sundays. So, are you ready to play? If you are, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. Again, FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. We are back on Locked On Lightning. Nick Morgan alongside Greg Stephen. And Greg, like we said, we're sick. We're both not feeling great today. We're powering through. No LTIR for us today.
None.
It's Nick Paul Day here on Locked On Lightning. We've been doing some player previews, and this is an interesting one because you mentioned him as possible trade bait at the beginning of the season. Let's talk about that in a little bit, but first, let's look back at his season last year and one big question heading into next season. Greg, what did you think of Nick Paul's game last year?
I thought it was about on par for the course. I think just like most of the team, somehow his defensive numbers did increase, which I was a little shocked about. As far as productivity on offense, he's about the same as he was the year before. I kind of expected him to take a little bit of a step forward, especially with some guys departing in the recent years. He didn't. He missed more games than the last 2 seasons. Missed 6 games, I believe, which not too much. I mean, guys miss games, so that seems like a pretty reasonable amount. But he's plus 13. Love to see that. He had 41 points in 76 games. And I thought he was good. I really wanted him to be great. He wasn't. He wasn't bad though. So I'd say again, par for the course. Think he was fine. Nothing too. I don't think he stood out as much to me this past season as he did in the year before and the year before that. Like I used to notice him a lot more on the ice, I think, and this past season he didn't stand out to me too much. He did have a few dazzling plays in the playoffs. I remember one specific goal. I was actually at the game and it was just nasty, but other than that one play, it was tough for me to think back on his season and really recall anything super notable.
Which, you know what, if you're the third line center, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd love a little bit more out of him, sure, but you also don't want to be talking about your bottom six forwards in a way that's, we kind of had a rule on when I did Locked On Predators with Ant Kimmel, which is if you're talking about either the bottom defensive pair or the bottom forward line, that's probably a problem with your team, unless they just do something outstanding.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it is interesting to me that the year before in 2024, Nick Paul had his career best year in terms of points. He also had a big jump in ice time from any other point in time he was with the Lightning. And then this past year, still decent points. I mean, 41 points, 22 goals is pretty good from your middle six. But he also had way less ice time than he did the year before. So it's interesting if John Cooper was like, okay, let's try Nick Paul out. Let's see if, maybe there's a bigger role for him. And it almost seems like this past year, he's like, nah, we're good with what Nick Paul brings to the table.
Yeah, it does seem that way. I think a big part of his reduction in ice time was Chafee this season. It seemed like Chafee, they really love him, and they were trying to get him in like so many different spots this past season. And it almost felt like it was eating some time out of there. I think the other part is, you bring Gensel in. Obviously, Stamkos was playing big minutes, but, now you have a slightly younger workhorse like Gensel, so he can eat more time too. So those two guys eating a bunch of time probably doesn't help his ice time. And also, I think it's better that he plays fewer minutes. I honestly think he's like, if you look at his numbers, he's so productive when he plays 14 minutes. So yeah. I don't think it impacts his game that much, like giving him an extra shift, so.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think they're looking at Mitchell Chafee as a star. I think it's just they kind of want to see if there's another depth guy that they could build into, the next Barclay Goodrow or
absolutely. And I think they just, even when he wasn't producing at times, it seemed like they were just very sold on him. And I don't know why, totally, to be honest with you, but it seemed to me like they were trying to force him into a lot of, like on the power play, they tried to force him in for some reason. And I know they needed a change, but he just didn't seem like the guy that was next up to be that change to me. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked with Chafee.
Oh, you're good. Yeah. Mitchell Chafee episode is.
It's coming.
Yeah. He's not. Mitchell Chafee's not getting his own dedicated episode. We will talk about him going into this year. He's not getting his own dedicated episode. So let me ask you, because we've been doing one big question mark for every player heading into this new season. What's yours for Nick Paul? And is this where you maybe question his trade value?
Yeah, I want to see him put up about the same season, if not just like a little more points. Let me throw something. He's 30, right? And it's hard for me, it feels like time has flown. I feel like he was just on the Senators and was almost just entering his real beginning of his NHL years, right? But he's 30 years old now.
Yeah. So
this is a big reason to me why I think he is a trade target and why I think he should, if he needs to put out more productivity to me, or I guess stay as strong defensively as he was this past season. He was plus 13. I think that's the best in his career. Let me look. Yeah, best in his career. So, if you're going to be defensively sound like that, please stay. But I just think he's an obvious candidate to deal for youth at this time.
So you talk about obvious candidate to trade for youth. I know you mentioned the blue line last time. Mm-hmm. Do you still see him as an expendable enough piece in that middle six or bottom six, whichever way you want to look at it, that he's a guy that you would try to lure another let's say young defenseman around here. I guess my question is, does Tampa Bay have enough depth apart from Nick Paul where a deal like that can make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And we'll talk about it more in a few minutes.
Yeah, we will talk about it in a few minutes. Plus, is there another move Tampa needs to make that doesn't involve trading Nick Paul, or in addition to trading Nick Paul? We're going to talk about that coming up in just a second. We're back on Locked On Lightning. Nick Morgan alongside Greg Stephen and Greg. We're talking Nick Paul right before the break. You talked about him maybe being a centerpiece in a trade for more youth, possibly on the blue end. Expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I do think the Lightning have enough depth. Would it be great if they could pick up another guy if they did make a trade like that? Yeah, but with adding Gord and Bjorkstrand in the end of the last year, that seems like such a good bolster to the depth of the forward group. Do I want to give up Nick Paul? Absolutely not. He is a stud. Like, Nick Paul plays the game well, and he also comes in clutch in the really hot moments. And we've seen that in the playoffs with him. And even this past postseason where the Lightning just kind of collapsed, he put up 2 goals. So look, if Kuch isn't going to put up a goal, he's got to do it, right? So I love Nick Paul. I love having him on the team. Would I sacrifice him for a young defenseman? 100% of the time I would. And the only reason is because, one, we want a younger guy, right? We want to start. I think what the term is for most people in this situation for the Lightning is retooling on the fly. And I think that that's important right now for this team if we want to see them remain competitive in my lifetime. Because look, these guys, like we've talked about many times, a lot of them are 30 plus. So he's one of them. Is he the 30 plus guy you want to keep on your roster, when he's 34? I don't think so. And I only don't think so because I think you can use him to get a strong return. He's a great player. A lot of teams are going to want Nick Paul. So I think he is bait. I think he could be moved. I think he's the most likely to be moved unless I'm overseeing something. I don't see anyone else on the roster that I really would want to give up other than a bottom 4 maybe, or Gord, I guess. But I think I'd keep Gord over Nick Paul at this point.
Yeah, I think that's, to me, is the Lightning have a really good roster right now. And I think really are locked in. If they go into this roster ahead of the year, you're pretty confident with them. But who's coming up behind them? And I think that's a question for me where maybe I'm a little bit hesitant to making a player for player move right now, is there somebody else on the roster or the Syracuse pipeline right now that can do what Nick Paul does for you on that third line as good as Nick Paul can do? And that, to me, is the big question mark, because if you're right, like if age is a concern, if Cooper and Brisebois have any sort of inkling that maybe a downturn is coming, then I'm with you. Then maybe it's time to pull the trigger and get young, especially if you can get a young defender out of that. But it's also one of those things where if he's doing what he did last year and scoring 40 points from the third line and being one of your top penalty killers, who else can step into that spot right now and play center? Like, are you expecting maybe
Finley?
Yeah, Finley to take that role? Are you maybe going to move Mitchell Chafee over? Or is somebody else going to play center? That to me is the question. Like, I think it's right now, and we talked about this a little bit with Yanni Gord the other day when he came back. It's like everybody is in such a role where they fit. That's perfect for them right now.
Agreed.
I don't know if you need to upset the apple cart by having players play bigger than they need to. And that's maybe my only thing about trading Nick Paul right now.
Right. Yeah, I think you made a good point with his productivity as far as dipping. And they have time to look at that, right? Like,
yeah,
if we get to 50 games into the season and he has 10 points, it's time to get rid of him, right? If he's at 50 to 60 points, whoa, okay, we're not dealing Nick Paul at all, right? Like, that's not even on the table anymore. If he sits back around 40, I think it could go either way.
And he's 30 years old. It's not like he's dying.
No, of course not.
Yeah. It's
But
not
I'm
like
just
he's
saying,
gonna.
if you want to reach, look, defense is the priority right now. And I said this before. I firmly believe in this. If your top two lines are offensively productive, it's great to have third and fourth line scorers, but ultimately those two lines should be getting most of that done. Your fourth line to me should be a power checking kind of forechecking line, and your third line can be like a utility more type line, which sometimes that's Hagel Sorelli. So we can debate that a little bit.
Yeah.
I just don't. He doesn't need to put up. Like, I think it's great that a third liner is putting up 40 plus points. That's fantastic. Like, we don't want to get rid of that guy. But if it means bolstering the defensive end of our team and also slightly boosting longevity, even if they get a 26-year-old, 28-year-old, it's a little bit extra, right? So
Yeah.
And if you're going to sign a new deal with someone like that, so I just, to me, it's worth it to get a defenseman for what Nick Paul is right this second. Would I do it in this moment? Absolutely not. I want to see what happens this season. But at the deadline, if he is less than 40 points, use him as bait, bring in a D-man, and hopefully he's good and young.
Yeah. Let's talk about some other possible moves the Lightning
Yeah.
can make, because they do have not much, but a little bit of cap space to play with, just under $2 million. I feel like now is the time heading into camp where you could find maybe a veteran player for nothing. And to me, one of the big ones out there is TJ Brody, who's been in the league for 14 years, 35 years old. He's not going to make you younger, Greg.
No.
That's one of the things. But we talk about the Lightning maybe having some question marks in terms of depth on the blue line. That's somebody that I think you could pay a veteran's minimum $1 million a year to, and just come in there and just be a body. And, we've seen him consistently be solid for so many years. That's a guy. You also have some other guys, our old buddy Jan Ruda, who's been injured the past couple of years, but is still trying to get back in the league. He's still available. Matt Grzelcyk, who's been a gritty veteran for a couple of years.
They're all still free agents right now?
They're all still free agents, and
Wow.
There's options out there. If the Lightning want to make one more move, you're in JBB's office right now. You're in his ear. Do you look and say one of these players would be good to bring in for camp? Or do you look and say, like, we're actually solid right now, we don't need to upset the apple cart?
I think you do nothing. And the reason I think that is because just looking at the roster, the defense doesn't look too bad right now. And I would like to give Radish a little more time. I'd like to give Lilleberg a little more time. I want to see what happens right now. I think if those guys take big steps forward this season, there's not going to be too
Darren Radish is 29 years old.
Absolutely. And again, if he's not going to be productive, he's also a trade bait. Like, look, package him up with Nick Paul and bait in someone that's going to be a long-term defensive player, right? But my point is more that I think you've said it a few times. The roster is solid. Like, there's not too many changes that you want to make right now, I don't think. And also, you do want to give the young guys some more time to build. And by bringing in a vet, sometimes that's taking a little bit of time away. Look, the veteranship can be good. I think the issue with I think bringing in a veteran it is absolutely imperative to winning a cup, first of all. That being said, I think the Lightning have so many of those guys already that are also just still superstars. Kucherov, Point, Hedman, Sorelli. There's so many of that. Like, it's not even necessary. Now, if the defenseman that you're adding brings in actual usefulness, then, on paper, more than just being that guy that's in the locker room, that's great. I just don't know if any of those three guys is really that guy. Like, Jan Ruda's not going to put up, I don't even think he'll put up 20 points, right? So I know. To me, I think you just wait it out, and then you see what happens during the season, because, like we've talked about, we watched the Rangers do a full collapse, right, and deal. I would call Trouba an elite defenseman, and look, all of a sudden, there's an elite defenseman on the available market. Like, let's see what happens. Hopefully, the team stays strong like they did this past season, and then something opens up, and we can make a little bit of a move. You said, I think we have about $2 million left. That's not too much money. It's a little bit, but it's not too much. But like you said, if there is a lingering vet that maybe needs a new team or a new home, or someone shopping a vet, maybe you can make a good deal there, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I think if there's a million or less deal out there for a veteran blue liner,
Yeah.
that's something I would explore. You're not necessarily to, just be a locker room guy, but test Darren Radish.
Yeah.
Test
Look, we got a guy here that can do this, and we know we can.
Yeah, and see if they can add some depth or maybe take a spot. We'll see how it is. I think that's possibly an option, but hey, I think the Lightning, regardless of what they do, are going to go into camp as one of the favorites in the NHL this season. Hey, for us, we are going to be moving to 5 shows a week. You get more of us, kids. Possibly less sick. So we're going to do that starting next week. We have some big topics. John Cooper, we're going to talk about the job he's done. Is he on the hot seat if the Lightning have another first-round collapse this year? We'll talk about how open is that Lightning Cup window and so many more heading into camp. A lot of fun topics. We're going to end it now, though, because both of us probably need to go into recovery mode. I know I'm dying for some Sudafed. So we're going to end it there for the week. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked on Lightning. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Back with an audio episode next week. We'll see you then.